everyone, and welcome to the My Ray of Sunshine podcast. My name is Mayra, and I'm here to help you receive the advice you deserve. Now, if you all are here, it's probably because you want to know exactly how you can start spreading suicide awareness. And since this is such a deep and personal topic and difficult topic to talk about as well, that is why I have Linky and Abile here with me today. So welcome, Linky and Abile.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course, again, I'm so happy you guys are here and able to talk about such a strong and powerful topic. Now, before we jump right in, tell us a little bit about your podcast and what your podcast is all about.
Well, our podcast is Sunflower Living, and it's about mental health. We really wanted to share our journey through our mental health and really just more than just our experience, delve into topics that are often taboo, delve into topics that are difficult, and to really just rip the Band-Aid off in very many ways, because I think a lot of the conversations that are had are very surface level. And so we wanted to go a little deeper. We wanted to kind of also be vulnerable about our own stories. And so that's what we use our platform for.
Yeah, definitely.
That's perfect. And it's so great to be able to talk about such a strong topic, no matter how difficult it is, just because we do have that platform, we do have that space. So why not just share our voice and help other people? I love that. And kind of ripping off the Band-Aid, like you said, because I mean, it is something that people just keep hiding and pushing under the rug. But once you get that topic going and that conversation, moving, it's so inspiring to do that.
No, definitely. And I think when we started out, it was mostly because of like the conversations that we had with ourselves as like personal friends and people who've like known each other for as long as we have. And it became almost like really important for us to almost change the face and the conversation of what mental illness was, because it's like, it's all good and well to kind of want to support people whom who are suffering and who are having a difficult time, by spreading positivity and trying to reassure them. But sometimes it is just best to let someone be in a bad place and almost let them know that you see that they're struggling. Sometimes that's more than enough. Whereas, instead of trying to get to a solution, you work through the process with the person whom you know and whom you love.
Right. And then they can kind of help get you through that just because it's someone you trust. Wow, I absolutely love that. And I think it's so important for people to have someone that they can rely on to have those difficult conversations, because it's always difficult to just start it. But as long as, they can help in any sort of way, that's what makes the impact.
Definitely.
Exactly.
I think we talk about community a lot, and we talk about having a support structure. For lots of people, that's difficult, but when we work at it, we're able to find one or two people who we can really trust, we can explain our situation to a lot better. And that way we're able to have open and honest conversations.
Yeah.
That's absolutely great. And I'm glad that you guys are using your platform to the biggest advantage. You're taking full advantage of it, and I love that. Now, what advice would you both be able to give others to help spread the suicide awareness, since it is so taboo right now?
Yeah, I think, in our episode where we delved into it, a lot of the time, the conversation is almost always prompted by someone having committed suicide. And it's so, I don't want to sort of overstress like how difficult it may be to like identify when someone is in a crisis, but has also decided to take like the specific step towards fixing the crisis. So more often than not, I mean, if you're terrified, if you feel you're in a position where you're just ready to end your life in order to kind of combat or put a definite end to the pain that you're experiencing, it is best, I think, to reach out to someone whom knows like this is, that you may have depression, or you may have bipolar, you may have, a kind of acute disorder like that, and just say, hi, this is where I'm at, and I know it's uncomfortable, but I just need someone to know and to be here, just in case I decide to take that final step.
And I think, that's I love how you said that, it is so much about reaching out. Like, you've got to sometimes have the courage to reach out. But I think for people in society in general, it's about finding some information. Knowledge is power. And I think one of the issues we have, and the reason that this is so taboo, is because people don't know. They don't know enough. They haven't done enough research. And again, we're not asking you to do like some in-depth research. Just read a few articles, just listen to a few podcasts, just engage a little more in the mental health space. And I know that that'll be enlightening. I know that that'll have a lot of information that people are not aware of. And that kind of starts the conversation. And I think people need to be open. A lot of the time, I find that with me and in some of my experiences is, even though people said they wanted to know about mental health, they wanted to attack or they wanted to impose their opinion versus being open to listening. And I think the more that we're on both sides, where I'm not defensive and they're open and they're willing to listen, then you have such a better conversation. And there's so much more that we learn from each other.
Wow, yes. I mean, you both couldn't have said it any better, really, because I mean, you just have to get that conversation going and most of all, listen, because so many of us are so quick to talk about those experiences without not even knowing all of the facts. And we have to really begin to understand what is mental health, what can lead someone to feel that way. And that way we can help them to the best of our ability, because if we don't, then it'll just keep making things worse.
Exactly. And I mean, I found that a lot of the time, even in my personal life, people who understand and have known that, I suffer from manic depression and, an anxiety disorder, they still want to be dismissive. And it's like, but that's not helpful, because I think you need to come from a place of where you understand that it's not about you. And a lot of the time, I tend to find that even family members or friends or even acquaintances want to say that, oh, no, but you're such a bubbly, happy person and you're all sorts of witty. And it's like, yeah, no, but I don't. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't owe anyone like the depth of your despair, but there are those select people whom you have to let in. Otherwise, it's just such an isolating experience, which can lead you to suicidal ideation.
Right. And I'm glad that you brought up suicidal ideation. Now, what exactly is suicide ideation and how does it differentiate from suicide planning? If you don't mind.
I think that's an important differential to make. And I'm glad that you started out with that. So suicidal ideation is thoughts about suicide, is about thoughts about ending your life. It's intrusive thoughts, often that to others would seem irrational, and even to yourself, are dangerous to some extent. And the difference between that and suicidal planning is when you actually put steps together and you're at the point at which you are ready to end your life. And I mean, we didn't say this at the beginning, but just to add that this is a really triggering topic. And I think it's important also for us to say we're not mental health professionals. This is just us sharing our experience. And I think what happens a lot of the time is that the two are conflated, and people believe that, well, if you say that you are feeling suicidal, if you say that you have thoughts of ending your life, they think that, oh, well, you're going to do it tomorrow. And what then happens is that it makes it difficult to then open up, because you already know you're going to be judged, and people don't know how to walk you through that process. And I mean, it's difficult, and it's different for everyone. So as much as we may give suggestions, each individual will go through it in their own way. And I think one of the dangers also is that we're not always sure when somebody is going through suicidal planning. They may not say a word. They may not reach out at all. And sometimes that period is very short. And often, in fact, people get happy once they get to that stage, and people think, oh, they're doing so much better. I don't want to talk about what happened 6 months ago. I don't want to talk about the fact that they were not okay. And so that person is excited because they finally made this decision. And it's so difficult. It's so heartbreaking. And I think that's really why the conversation has to start long before we get to this point. The conversation has to start long before somebody is even in the state where their ideation has gotten to a point of planning.
Exactly.
Wow. Yes, because I mean, you never really know what stage they're in until you talk about it. And I mean, some people might be afraid and hear like that you're thinking about it, and then it's like, oh my goodness, like don't do it. Like they automatically assume that like you said, Linky, that they're gonna do it tomorrow. And that's just not the case. It's just, maybe perhaps it can be something that we just think about, just so that way we can like forget all of our worries,
Yes.
put that stress aside, and
Exactly.
we kind of fantasize that, because that's our form of sedating all of the things that are going on in our life.
Correct.
All of the obstacles, the challenges. But that doesn't mean that we actually sat down and we're like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to accomplish this? Because it is two completely different steps.
Correct.
And that is what people like should really look out for, because I mean, as long as you can start that conversation right away, it can really help, make it just be suicide ideation and not the whole suicide planning process, because then that's like, you could risk that it's too late for many people, which is, completely heartbreaking. And, you never know unless you continue talking about it.
True.
Exactly. And I think there are so many instances where, even in my life, because I'm still a student in university at the moment. I mean, I think in my first year at our university, there were like at least, I want to say 4 students that year who took their own lives. One of them who was someone I knew. And in that instance, it was like I saw, the immediate reaction that came out of it, but I don't think a lot of people understood the leading up to it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's all good and well to sort of know that, oh, someone that you love struggles with this, struggles with that. But if you don't level with them and be like, be honest with me, are you okay? Because I think there's a lot of power in the phrase, are you okay?
Yes.
Especially when you give someone the room to say, no, I'm not. And, oftentimes Linky has been that person for me where I've been like, I'm just not having a good day. It's not, anything that should overtly worry you, but it's just an uncomfortable spot for me. And I just need that support. And I need someone who gets it.
Yeah, it's important to see those signs where they're going through it, and we perhaps just think, oh, they'll get over it, it was just one bad day or one bad situation, or they're just going through a rough time right now, but they'll get through it, because you can't guarantee that's where their headspace is at. You can't guarantee that they're only thinking about getting better, when in fact, they could be getting excited, just fantasizing that, they could take their own life in a different way, and soon, like it's something that is unpredictable, which is scary, especially when you have people in the universities, people, growing up just taking their own lives. And it's like, how can you see those signs beforehand, which is really the problem.
Yeah, totally. I think I've often said, oh, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
No, I think that there have been instances with Linky where I say that it's almost as if you're not allowed in general to say that life is hard, because if you do, then it's like, no, you don't appreciate. It's like, it's nothing to do with appreciation. It's rough right now. And I feel like I should have the room to say that. And a lot of times, something that quite irritates me is that people will take it as a personal attack on their own lives. And it's like, no, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me and my perspective. You're probably okay. And even if you're not, we can talk about it. But I just really feel like we need to kind of let people have the room to say, Yeah, it's rough, guys. And I would really love it if I could just talk about why it's rough and maybe
Yes.
get myself to a place where it's like, it's no longer that rough. Thank you for listening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to add to that, like you said, it's we often excuse things like, oh, I'm not coping with work. And when there's something specific, like a topic specific issue, people feel like, oh, okay, that's fine. But when you, on a recurring basis, feel like you're not coping with life, people then start to say, well, you're crazy. And I think when we start to throw around words like that, that again makes people unwilling to really talk about it. They don't want to share. And so then we hide. It's kind of like there's so much shame attached to it because, again, there's just the sense that there's something wrong with you. And that's what we're trying to communicate again, is that, no, that's not the case. You have an illness. Like any other illness, it needs management. And that management often can take a long time to get to a point where it's consistent. And so, you know, we need to just be in a space where we allow people to go through it. We allow people to feel their feelings. And once they've done that, we're able to say, okay, I've walked with you. Are you getting to a place that's better? How can I help you? How can we get you help if I can't help you? And I think that's, you know, that's really where we have to, that's how we have to tackle it.
Yes. You both couldn't have said it better because I mean, yeah, you do have to really, really get to that point where you bring up that conversation, bring up those feelings. And even if that means like resonating with the other individual, like when they say life is hard, yes, it is. You know, it is very hard. I'm struggling too. But then it's also important not to make it about yourself, not to make it about your struggles, but rather than just listening to what they're going through and listening to the extent. And yes, it could be like a heartbreak or job related, but that's something that's serious to them in that particular moment, which could literally affect their whole lives.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to just like listen versus, you know, pointing fingers and saying, oh, you're crazy, you shouldn't feel this way. And yeah, that's kind of how you have to like start getting the conversation going.
Exactly. And I mean, like, there's so much invalidation that can sometimes come about, not intentionally, but because, you know, I think we're always like, we have so much positivity and you should be grateful for this and grateful for the other thing. And that's not to sort of say, it sometimes comes off as you're almost assuming as if I'm not grateful for everything that's going on in my life. But it's actually just, I can't really see that because I'm in a dark place. And that dark place is not allowing for a lot of light to come in.
Right. Yes. And who can control what you're feeling in that moment? You know, like you could have everything that you want, a family that you're grateful for. But hey, if you're in a dark space, like it's hard to get yourself out of that and kind of start to like be hopeful again instead of hopeless.
Yeah.
And what are some common misconceptions about suicide that keeps the conversation, the topic, from being normalized in this society alone?
The one that I will start with, which often makes me very upset, is that people with mental illnesses and people who are on the verge of suicide are selfish. Now,
I thought you were going to say the other thing, but it's fine. I'll just carry on with that.
You can say me.
It's okay, yeah.
I find that really frustrating because, again, it's a lack of understanding. It's, again, a shaming. And so I think that's what keeps it from being topical, because a lot of the time the guests who are interviewed, whether it's on TV shows or on radio or other platforms, are often mental health professionals. So people hear this very this high level kind of conversation about, you know, this is the psychology behind it and this is the science behind it. And there are no real humans who are saying, hey, okay, I was on the verge and this is where I am now. And maybe I'm in a better place. Or hey, I am on the verge right now and I want to have a conversation about it, because they are afraid, again, of being labeled. And when, like I say, and I think one of the worst labels is to be labeled selfish, because that's not it at all. It really is just a stage in which life is so overwhelming and so suffocating that the only solution seems to be to end it. And we know that that's not necessarily true, but in that moment, there's nothing else in front of you. I want to almost say it's like you're in a dark room, and no matter how much you try to turn on the lights, like you can see them, you know that they exist, they're just not going on. And so the only thing you can see to get out of that space, is to end it. And again, there's also this feeling that you're a burden on those around you because of your mental health, because you've gone through it for so long. It's so important, again, to just note that that's the feeling, and a lot of it is emotion based. And so I feel like if we could have some candid conversations, not just these high level, very theoretical, hypothetical conversations, that's what's really keeping us from that space, is not having realistic conversations about it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the time, even, I think especially within a South African context, it's, Linky also, having grown up here, can relate to a lot of this, and saying that when we try and lean on our families, or lean on to, it could be a partner or whatever else, there's just this almost, like, it's always annoying when people are like, oh no, you just want attention. And it's like, no, there are other ways to get attention.
Right?
This is not it.
Lots of other ways.
Yeah.
So many other ways. Like, I could buy a puppy if I wanted attention. Do you know what I mean? So when people are like, I know you're fine, like, it's okay, especially, as a woman in this country, where, you are seen as a pillar of strength, and you are seen as someone who is almost indestructible.
Yes.
It's like, no. First and foremost, I am a human, thus I am fallible. And also, someone please help me, because I'm not coping. I don't want attention. Again, could buy a puppy if I wanted attention. But it really is such a lonely place, like Linky says, where it's, sorry about that, where it's just, it's such a quiet, dark, and almost, it's as if, you have this massive secret that you can't tell anyone about, even though it would be okay if you could. And I think when people sort of, like Linky says, with candid conversations, and just really allowing someone the space to come, like, into whatever situation, and just say, this is what I'm going through, this is what it looks like, and I just need someone to see this and see what it is that I'm going through.
Right. Yes, because I mean, it's far less from being selfish. It's far from wanting the attention, like it's more than that. It goes way beyond that, because in a sense, this is more serious. This is you literally putting your life at risk because of what you're going through, because of your situation. And it's like, hello, like, can anyone see this too? Or can anyone help me get out of that space without allowing me to feel bad for having those thoughts, for having those feelings, when right now everything's just too hard to cope with. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's really crucial to just, like, tune in to, that cry for help. And it sucks that there are so many, like, misconceptions about it, and that people are still not understanding, like, what your real true intention is from just making it aware to them what you're going through.
And I think there is also, like, the reverse side of it, whereas, when a suicide attempt is not successful, then there is the kind of repercussions of your loved one, your son, daughter, husband, wife, could be in a vegetative state, and that wasn't the intention. And then, then you, as the person on the receiving end of this news, has to contend with a lot of, guilt, and a lot of, but what could we have done? And I think a lot of the time the simple answer, not even the simple answer, but the difficult answer is that there really was nothing you could have done outside of the things that we've already talked about. And it's not it's not fair to blame yourself, but at the same time it's understandable where that guilt can come from, because we want to believe that we're able to support the people that we love at all times, and we're able to really almost save them, if I can put it that way. And it's not really about that. It's almost like empowering that person to know that you can, you can fight this and you can beat it, and there is a tomorrow. The sun will come in, but I can't tell you, it's not nice. You shouldn't try and be facetious or deceitful and say that, no, it'll be fine, because then there isn't a time frame in which it will be fine. And
Right.
sometimes it's just best to walk alongside someone, as difficult as it can be, and just say, look, here, if you need anything, whatever else. And I mean, you do find a lot of lists and things like that on apps like Pinterest or even on Instagram. But I think as a mental health community, we really have to be able to just sit and be like, this is what it is, and this is what it looks like for me. What does it look like for you?
Yeah, that's just so crucial, because I mean, I agree with you how it's always like that guilt that we feel like, oh my goodness, how did I not see the signs? How could I have done things differently? Like, if I would have done this or this, like, would they still be here right now? And that's just like a haunting thought. And that's also like one of my good friends, she took her life, and that was also like one of the things that I kept like, telling myself, wow, I could have done something differently, I could have been there, I could have like, how could I not see it coming? And you really can't. How are you going to be able to see that coming, or like, you really don't know how they're feeling? And even if you were to like hang out with them, it's not like they'll tell you, like, it's just like having to open up that space where they can be completely vulnerable. And sometimes they have their minds made up, and it's too late. But I think what helped me at least like cope with that aspect was, since unfortunately it was like the first time I've ever lost anyone, and it was unfortunate that she was like really close in age to me. I guess like one time, like, I had a dream that where like I saw her, and it was just her way of saying goodbye to me. And I just remember like looking at her, and I'm like so angry, like, this was such a vivid dream that I don't think I can ever forget. And I was like, why did you do this? Like, because I wasn't sure. This was the first time ever someone has ever passed away and in my life. And I remember she was just like so happy, like she was like the happiest. And she's like, I understand, but if I chose to live, my mind, body, and soul would not be happy here. And that just really puts things into perspective, how she was already in that space. Like, she had already made up her mind that this was her way out, and she was happy with that decision because that's what she wanted for herself. And then it was
Yeah.
like, wow, okay, let me, like, I took a step back, like, I breathed a little bit. And then I remember waking up and just feeling like closure, because it was like, it was always like, what could I have done, what could her family have done, like, what could anyone else do to prevent this? But that's what she needed. And she's happy with that decision. And sometimes it's just something that you have to really, really like wrap your head around. But I was happy that like I had such a powerful and vivid dream, because that's what I needed, in a sense, to like move on and stop blaming myself. And that's what people also have to realize, is that it's something that they're going through. You just have to be there, try to see the signs, and like walk with them, and not try to like sugarcoat everything, because it's not going to help them. And just walking with them through that difficult time can be a really big difference, and can really hopefully help shift their mindset into finally finding that hope.
Yeah.
And why do you both think it's so difficult for others to open up about this topic? Like, could it be their cultural values, their lifestyle, or even their religion?
I think it's a combination of all of those. I think there's definitely certain, well, I think in every home, in every culture, in every community, there are definitely difficult conversations, and there's definitely things that, like we've said, are taboo. And I think this is one of them across cultures. And so sometimes I think the reason people don't open up is one of those is cultural values. The other, though, and when you talk about religion, is that often religion shames people. And I am a woman of faith, and so I'm always very careful, and I'm also very outspoken when I speak to people, and I say, if we are open, if we're able to say, okay, we're willing to listen, then people will speak up. So like I've said before, I think so much of it is really around exactly that. It's really around the fear. There's a lot of fear attached to mental health and having a mental illness, no matter where on the spectrum you are. I just think about people who have high stress levels. It's really difficult to say, hey, I'm under a lot of pressure, I need a break, because immediately people make assumptions. And so I think the difficulty really is the initial fear. Once we get over that, then it's easier to start talking about. But I think the way that we need to look at it is that communities need to be open enough to hear people out, to be able to listen. And when we view it in that way, I think then we'll have a lot more people come out and talk about it.
Yes. And hopefully get rid of that fear attached to it, no matter what. Yeah. I completely agree. And sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, like, just to again add, from my cultural perspective, having seen my parents, because my parents are, that's what I'm looking for. They're older in a lot of ways, I think. So watching them almost grapple with this idea that there's, because oftentimes within my context, you only ever really see a psychologist if you've, like, I don't know, murdered your neighbors. That's like when you would sit in front of them. Like, it has to be something really extreme for people to almost accept that, oh, this is a mental thing. But when I watched my parents, there was almost this denial that was difficult for them to shake and to sort of have to contend with, because we're very big on, like, in my culture anyway, we're very big on sort of like, what will the community think? What will other people think? What is the opinion of, our friends, etc.? Because it is a very foreign concept still to sort of like be like, oh no, there's just something that's mildly out of character, or there is a chemical imbalance. That's difficult to contend with, because it's like, what does that look like? What is the ultimate here? So there have been really extreme cases at times where, like, let's say if you live in a township situation, which is usually where, I don't know if you know about apartheid in SA.
I don't think so.
So basically, like, in our country's history, there was a separation between the races. So Black people lived in what we call townships, or locations that were just made for Black people. White people lived in the suburbs. And then we have a race we call colored people, as well as Indian people. So we were all sort of separated. So oftentimes within Black communities, it would be common for the community to get together and beat it out of you. So to beat the mental illness out of you, or something to that respect, because it's just it's weird, it's uncomfortable for people to contend with. And sometimes I don't think parents know what to do. I don't think communities know what to do. Where, sometimes it's like, well, maybe if we do this, then they'll, like, act straight, or, like, just keep it to themselves, and then we can all just pretend that everything is good and well. So there are kind of extreme cases like that where it is just daunting for some cultures across the board, I think.
Yes. Oh my goodness. When you were talking about like the whole therapy and how, that's
Mhm.
only for worst case scenario if like you're dealing with a really, really bad mental illness, then that's when you can go. But
Mm-hmm.
like I think that also has to be normalized in our society, like within, every culture, every religion, just because like sometimes people just need to talk about their feelings. They just need internal coping. They just
Yeah.
need those tips, and you can't really rely on your parents to give you that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was even hard for my mom to understand, like, okay, I'm gonna start going to therapy and stuff, and it for my anxiety. And she's like, not really understanding to the extent that my anxiety took place. But like she doesn't have to know all the answers. That's why I'm seeking a professional. So it's like, those things that our parents still kind of find taboo. And it's like, wait, you shouldn't need to go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
You should have everything figured out. Like, and I think that they also kind of resort to that guilt themselves, thinking like if there was something that they could have done that could, not allowed you to seek a professional for help. Um, there's always guilt and fear and everything, all this stigma attached to like just this
Correct. A
topic
lot.
alone. A lot, yeah, a lot. And it's like mental health, like you have to be able to like be able to understand it at least, and not try to sugarcoat it all the time.
Yeah.
And understand that there's a spectrum. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it's kind of like how, like if you have a hobby, you have your sort of like, let's say on a one, like someone who has a passing interest in a hobby, and then you have people on, the 10 side of it, where it's like, yeah, I've got a room specifically dedicated to this one thing, and I'll rewatch the movies and I'll rewatch the series, and I've got posters. And then you just have people who are kind of on different sides of that spectrum, where it's, yeah, I'm interested, like you could be a five, and then it's like, yeah, I have a healthy interest in this. So I mean,
Mhm.
I think if you can almost simplify the idea of a spectrum existing within mental health, and I think we as, people who speak upon it and have platforms that are targeted towards it, need to almost like almost repetitively say that it's a spectrum,
Mhm.
and it's not just, it doesn't look a certain way. It doesn't look like, what the movies like Split or whatever else
Yes.
want to
Mm.
say that it is, because
Mhm.
those mental illnesses do exist, but that's not the entire spectrum. That's not all of
Mm.
us.
Yes.
Right. Because a lot of it is so internal. No one can
Mm.
really see if anyone's having like a panic attack, because, all those
Yes.
feelings are internal. Like your
Yes.
heart is racing. How are they going to know like
Mm.
what you're going through? So it's just like sometimes what you see in movies and all that stuff, like, yes, perhaps they do need help if they have a certain disorder, but like
Mm.
you can't always visibly
Yeah.
see what people are struggling with. And that's why it's also so important to be okay with them
Mm.
just like, seeking out answers from professionals that are meant to give you those answers.
Correct.
Yeah.
And how can people reach a level of understanding to appropriately help someone in crisis? And how can they avoid causing more harm than good? Since sometimes it can be like, you kind of have to tiptoe away from like sugarcoating it,
Mm.
and you want to make sure that they feel understood, but how can they exactly do that?
Why are you looking at me? I don't know.
Okay. Okay. I'll take this one.
No, okay, no, we can split it in two, because what I was gonna say was sort of like,
Sorry.
it's okay. The tools related to it, it's just sort of like, it varies, obviously, because the experience is often, I mean, like I said, I think in a couple of our episodes on our podcast, I would say to Linky that, a lot of, I think, was it in the specific episode where I talk about, oh, it's Abby Takes a Dive, where I talk about specifically how every depressive episode that I've ever had has never been the same. It has never been, it will sometimes have a trigger, and then sometimes it won't. It will just sort of like fall upon me. And I know that there will be different times in a year where I can expect a depressive episode, but then sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't happen at all. So, we need, the conversation has to be constant, and it has to be ever evolving. that's how I think people can properly equip themselves. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like when you start going to the gym, you're not immediately a fitness influencer. That takes a while. That takes a couple of years. So when you want to be, I don't know, a mental health influencer, let's tag it, let's, coin a new term. It takes time, and you have to be honest with people. I don't think there's anything wrong with, sitting in front of someone who's in crisis and saying, I don't know how to help you. I really don't. But I can sit here and I can listen, and you can tell me what it is you need from me to help you. So again, it comes back to the conversation just being constant, evolving. And there has to be the willingness, and we can never stress this enough, to listen and to hear what it is that is being said, and not just what you want to hear or what the quickest way to a solution is.
Right. That is so right. Just because, like, when someone's in crisis, like you said, it's a different episode every time. Like, sometimes you just want your time alone. You just want to, like, think to yourself and like figure things out on your own, and you tend to push them away. But other times you just really just need them to be there without you feeling 100% okay or stable or anything. Like, you just need their company, and that way you're not alone going through it. Because I mean, even asking the simple question of like, what do you need from me?
Yes.
Sometimes they might not even know. Like, they might not know exactly what can help them feel better, but it's to the point of like figuring things out together. And like you said, listening is key, because people tend to just, brush things off, push things under the rug, when all they really should do is listen to what is actually going on, and not just the surface level, yes, I'm fine.
I think to add to that, I'm sure there are people out there like me who are like, yes, I heard you, I must listen, but what must I say? And so a few things that I would add is to say, I'm here for you. That's such a simple thing to say. I'm here for you. Thank you for opening up to me. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me what you're going through. And then again, like you said, how can I help you? Is there something I can do right now? And sometimes that will be just sit with me. And sometimes that'll be, you need to call my doctor. And so I think we need to be open again. And you both said it, listen. Listening is key. And until we get that right, there's not much more that we can do. Because I think that's really the foundation of all of it.
Yes.
And if you don't listen, you can't drive a conversation forward.
No.
Do you know what I mean? You really can't, especially when, some people will want to throw a wrench into the conversation and say, well, what about this? And then, because it's such it's not an incendiary topic at times, there's sometimes you'll want to like defend a side, and it's like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this bigger picture.
Yes.
Let's stay on course with that. So I think when we can really, again, just listen, hear what needs to be said, that way we can have a constructive, meaningful conversation that allows people to just be vulnerable and open up, because that's hard. And sometimes you never want to, sometimes you'll find that, in trying to listen, you sort of push someone away, and then they go and seek, that support in places that aren't capable of giving them that support, or places where someone will want to take advantage of them because they are as vulnerable as they are. And then, that just almost compounds the issues. So again, listening will always be key, and listening, it will evolve, it will look different. But as long as it's being done, we can definitely get to a good place as a community and a society.
Yes. I mean, I think I would always, when people would tell me, that they're struggling with, like, it would always be my fault to tell them, like, trying to sugarcoat it, because in times like I didn't know how to help. So then I would try to get them to like think of the future and all these things, and like all these things that they have to look forward to. But then sometimes what I lacked was just simply listening to what they were really going through and empathizing with them and just trying to see things from their perspectives to try to help them even more in times when they're in crisis themselves. So I've been working on that too. And, simply saying things like, I'm here for you, if you ever need anything. But then again, I remember hearing in your episode that it's like hard to like put yourself as that individual of like, when, if anything were to happen, lean on me, because that's a huge responsibility. And that's what I liked about your episode as well, when you both were talking about it, was when, like, are you really prepared for that call at 3 a.m. from someone like who's really in crisis? Like, you have to really mentally prepare for that huge responsibility of someone's life. And that's what's really important too. And what has been the best thing someone has said or done for you whenever you felt, upset, whenever you felt like just life was really, really difficult, and perhaps they did or said something that helped you push forward and keep pushing on in life?
I'm trying to think now. I think one of the best things that was almost paramount for me, I think, was when I was having a really bad day, a really just down in the dumps, dark day. And my mother just came and sat on my bed and she just listened to me. That was it. She didn't say anything. She nodded along. She just heard me. In as much as you can sometimes see on someone's face that they don't understand what you're saying, but they're catching the words and they are catching the experience like on their own level. So that for me was a huge moment, because I can remember times where my mom was just very confrontational, didn't want to contend with the intensity of what I was going through. But to kind of see that 360, whereas she's here, she's sitting with me and she can see that I'm not okay and she's letting me get it out. That was a huge game changer for me.
Wow. And she didn't even have to do much besides like sitting on your bed.
She just had to sit there. That's it.
Wow.
I think for me, a very personal one is, I'm not going to leave you. That was a game changer. Because I think so much of the time you're waiting for someone to say, this is too much, this is too intense, I'm out, I'm not doing this friendship with you, I'm not doing this relationship with you. And I think hearing that and being able to go through that episode the way that it went on for a really long time was really was a turning point for me. And I was like, oh, there are people out there that are not going to shame me. They're not going to tell me to think positive thoughts. They're not going to invalidate my experience. And I think that's like a big one for me. And another one, like I said, is I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Let's sit and talk about this. Can we talk about this? There's an episode of a show that I would love to plug, but
plug away.
Anybody who has Amazon Prime or Prime Video needs to watch an episode of, I think they call it Modern Love. And there's one episode specifically about bipolar disorder. And it was the most accurate episode I'd ever seen. And I was like, this is exactly it. This is exactly how it feels. This is exactly how difficult it is to manage, to navigate. And this is what a mood disorder does. And I think watching that, I was like, oh my goodness, I think more people need to see this, because it explains again that there's a spectrum, but it hones in on one of, I guess, the more acute disorders. So I think that's like a really important episode for anybody who can find it. Please do.
Yes, I definitely need to check it out. Like, now I'm like, I know what to do after this episode.
Definitely.
But yes,
I think ooh, sorry. No,
go on. No, go.
what was I saying just now? I don't know. Linky shared, I think that snippet. What was it? It was like 2 and however many minutes, and I was like, "This really is it." And I could. She was. Were you crying? And
We were
then when you
crying.
text, and I was like, in 2 different time zones, but I was like, "Yes, this is it." Oh my God. But it's always such an encouraging and empowering moment when you can almost see yourself in a piece of media and know that I'm not alone in a big way. And it's not even kind of having that conversation with the people within your circle, but it's to see it and be like, that is it. And I will be okay, because so many people are going through this. It may not be the majority. It may not be, people who I have immediate access to, but it is there and it is real. I think that's the biggest challenge that we still face as a community, that people don't want to accept that, even sufferers themselves don't want to accept that it is very much real and there isn't a time limit to it. I think I've said this in a couple of our episodes where it's just like, this isn't like, I can't punch out of this. This is every day. This is, some days are worse than others, but it's every single day. And it's something that I'm going to be contending with for the rest of my life. And it's daunting, but I know that I have the support system that will allow me to still be despite it and despite those difficult moments.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's like those moments that can really help you feel loved in a completely different level, even if that means
Exactly.
just wanting to be heard or just knowing that they're not going to leave you, that they're still going to be there with you, listening to you like throughout every step. Because I know when I was having a difficult time, um, my sister told me, I hear you. I know you're going through this and it's a rough time, like, and she resonated with me. And she's like, sometimes I feel the same way. She's like, you're not alone. You're not alone. And just like knowing that I'm not alone is what helps me get through it sometimes, because you can feel like you're just in a dark room, in a dark space, and there's no way out. And you just, sometimes I've pushed my boyfriend away as well when I'm in that space, and then it's just all that it takes is for me to hear that, like, okay, I'm here if you need anything. And then it's like, well, I don't want to keep crying, like, I don't want to keep
Yeah.
being in that mental space. I don't know how I will feel better, but hey, come over, so it's like those things that can really shift and make a whole difference just by that support system that we have, this love that surrounds us, and that constant reminder that, like, we're not alone and these are the people that can help us feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And what is the biggest takeaway you hope someone who is struggling internally to take away from this episode alone?
You're not alone. You are not alone.
Exactly.
There is a community out there. There are lots of resources that you can get in touch with if you are feeling as if you are on the verge of the end of yourself. Let me put it that way. Then reach out for help. And I think that's really what I want someone to walk away with. It's just knowing that there are people who want to help you. I don't want to say, oh, there are people who love you. Yes, they are those, but there are people who want to help you, who want to walk alongside you. And don't give up. Really, don't give up. Not yet. There's a lot that, like our tagline says, because life is always worth living for. There's always something out there that you can hold on to.
No matter how small.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how small. It could be, I mean, I've had days where I will wake up and it's the color of the sky that will sadden me, but then the moment I don't know, like I'll just read a good morning text from one of my closest friends and they tell me that, they're thinking about me. That means a lot, because I think it's easy to forget in this almost interconnected world that people do think about you and people do care about you. It's not a weird thing to display affection to someone, or even just simply say hi. Their life really is worth living, and there's so many aspects to it that I think we're prone to forget. But as long as you can just find even one thing that makes the agony better, you're in a much better place, or heading towards a better place.
Yes, and it can be so worth it to just remind yourself remind yourself of that love, that hope to keep pushing and keep reminding yourself that you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this, and people are
Yeah.
still, pushing along. So it's just wherever you find that hope, like hold on to it for as long as possible, and not give up in the process because it's not life isn't meant to be, easy in any sort of way. And I feel like if it was, we wouldn't appreciate everything that we can achieve.
Yeah.
So we all need that like obstacle to kind of keep ourselves going and remind ourselves that there's just so much more out there that we still have yet to see.
Yes.
Exactly.
And what are some resources that have helped you or that could help someone else in crisis? Um, that can make the difference.
I think there are a lot of crisis lines. So there's Mental Health America, there's the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, there's a crisis text line. There's an organization called National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they're a great resource. And I think more than just in crisis, I think just when you're starting to feel like something is wrong, go out, go to those websites, check out what they say, do some of the, the online checklists, and reach out to your medical professional. If you think that, okay, I can't get to anyone else, I don't want to phone an anonymous line, then you can reach out to your regular doctor. And I think that a lot of the time, in terms of resources, we only think of those crisis lines, but they're also the people around you. The people around you are a resource because your community and your support system are going to be there once you drop the phone. They're going to be there in the darkest times at 3:00 in the morning. And so making sure that you have a strong support system. One of the other resources, if I can call it that I think people need to investigate is a toolbox. We call it a toolbox, like an arsenal of tools, techniques that help you in the moment. And I know some of them might not, some work for some and some work for others. And so just finding out for yourself, what do you need in a moment of crisis so that you can communicate that? Because once you've communicated it, people can then step in and help you. But if you're also in a state of not knowing, and I know that sometimes in the early days, you really don't know and you've got to try different things. But there is a time when like you say, sometimes you just need to be alone. And it's okay to communicate and say, I really need to be alone. I really just need this time to just breathe, to just connect with myself, to just disconnect from all of the noise. And this is what I need. And then people can support you through that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, our support system really can take things to the next level. And also just having those other resources, that toolbox too, that can really help keep us in tune and can help others know exactly what to do in times of those crises when it's not a professional that you can rely on, where, your parents can kind of, be aware of your toolbox and what you need in that exact moment. That way they know exactly how to help you and not make things worse.
Yeah.
So I think that's so crucial. And I'll actually be attaching all of the resources, the numbers, everything in the podcast details. That way everyone can have access to that, because taking advantage of those tools that we have and how we have like a 24/7 suicide hotline, if you're ever in distress, that's comforting because they're there for you. They're trained to help you, and they can help you see the light. And that's what, the end game should always be.
Yeah, exactly.
And now everyone, like, where can everyone find you?
You can find, so our main podcast link is we are Sunflower Living on Podbean, and then you can also find us under Sunflower Living Pod on Instagram, as well as I think you can find us on Spotify as well, links, am I right?
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts, we are there.
Yeah. And if we're not,
Perfect.
please let us know. Just DM us on Instagram, then we can fix that. Just send an email to someone.
I know that I listen to your podcast on Spotify, and it's perfect because I always follow it and I always get a notification when there's a new episode. So
Thank you.
Oh, yay! That makes me so happy.
Yes,
I
right?
absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And I also love the tagline that you both have that, because life is worth living for. So it's such an inspiration what you guys are doing. You guys are helping so many people. And that's why I'm so happy that you guys are here to talk about a difficult situation because, you guys in a sense made it a lot easier versus just me, like just talking
Yeah.
because it sounds like you guys really know how to help others, and that's what I wanted for my listeners as well. So I really appreciate you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
having
having
us.
us.
Of course, of course. It was such a joy, and I'm sure everyone learned so much.
Definitely. We'll have to have you on ours soon.
Yes,
Yeah, at some
yes,
point.
we'll definitely get planning.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. So, everyone, I really hope this podcast made you smile at least once. Stay tuned for more advice and positivity next Friday. As always, it's Myra. I hope everyone has taken a huge chunk of their advice because I'm sure it will really help you see the light in any of the challenges that you might be facing right now. And don't forget that your life is so precious and you just have to keep going and not give up. And even when it's your darkest days, rely on your support system, rely on your loved ones. And you can always rely on professional services that can really help you get through it because they're trained and it can really help your life improve so much better. And you can also take that time to just keep going and focus on yourself and your own mental health because you should always prioritize that first. Bye.